Hey guys, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my channel. It's so good to see you guys. Thank you guys for popping in. First off, apologies for the lawnmower outside. I am really hoping that you can't hear it. It's my neighbors and I only have so much time to film today, so we're just rolling with it. It's Washington State and it's the one day a month that we get sun and they just have to mow. So they gotta do what they gotta do, we gotta do what we gotta do. We're just gonna roll with that, okay? Hopefully you can't even hear it. But what I really wanted to talk to you today about was how a lot of our houseplants are actually considered invasive species in other countries and even my own country. I live in the US, I'm in Washington State, so in case you didn't know that, a lot of these tropical plants will thrive in tropical locations. And a lot of these tropical plants have been taken from one small island or one small location, and they have been spread globally across the world. And where there are naturally tropical environments, like Florida, for example, these plants are absolutely taking over. They've become like the mint of the houseplant world. You just unleash them in your yard and they run absolutely rampant everywhere. So I actually deal with some invasive species in my own yard, so I'm going to show that to you really quick in just a minute. But before we go out there and take a look at that, I did want to go over the houseplants that I personally have here that are considered invasive in other parts of the country and in other places in the world. So let's get into it. Also, thank you so much for watching and please subscribe. So I really wanted to talk about Epipremnum aureum, also known as the golden pothos. This is the #1 plant on my list. It is considered highly invasive. If you Google this plant, it will tell you exactly how invasive it is. It's a very, very beautiful plant, and lots of people want to see it grow. They will plant it in their yards, in a lot of tropical locations, and it will grow, it will fenestrate, it will climb up trees, and then it will proceed to choke out the trees and choke out all of the natural and native plant life in those areas. So it's beautiful, and we love that it continues to grow and it thrives no matter what. But in an outdoor environment where there is no containment, this can really be a problem. Speaking of plants that can be a problem, our #1 favorite plant, houseplant every single year, is the Monstera deliciosa, and it does the same thing. It climbs and it gets super huge, and it's got these big beautiful leaves. Here, let me get over here. And it gets these big beautiful leaves and it just doesn't stop. It just keeps on climbing and keeps on growing, especially in Australia where it's not really a native plant. It was introduced and now it's just taking over all kinds of things and actually preventing poor koala bears from being able to climb trees and get to their food. So we just need to be careful where we plant these plants because they are vigorous growers. They will go crazy. They will grow all over the place. And I mean, it's not really a particular issue here in the colder environments, up here up north, but definitely down south, it's something to have a conversation about, I feel. Another plant that is completely taken over southern places, especially Australia and again Florida, like I've mentioned, some places in Mexico, is this Tradescantia. I know mine's looking a little rough. This is a little propagation, but this plant will seriously, it'll cover entire people's backyards. It will go all over the place, and it is considered a weed there. Like up here, we'll pay $20, $30 for a nice big basket of it. They're literally ripping it out of the yard. I mean, even places in California, they have released this in their backyards, and they are now having to go and dig it up, and it just won't stop growing. It keeps coming back. So yay that it survives in the house, and it does so well. But one of the reasons that it was chosen to be such an amazing houseplant is because it doesn't stop growing, and it is considered a weed where it originally comes from, or it's so invasive that it just doesn't stop. So this is again another one of those I would recommend we not plant out in our yards. Definitely one that if you're going to plant it, just like they say with mint and lemon balm, definitely make sure that you are putting these plants in pots and keeping them contained, because if you release them, you don't know if you'll be able to contain that monster. Like, I mean, it is a beautiful, sparkly, glittery monster, but she is dangerous, guys. Oh my gosh. So this one actually kind of shocked me a little bit. I I had to look it up and double check. But Chlorophytum cosmosum, the spider plant, actually is considered invasive. And I mean, it makes sense. Excuse the ants, but see these roots? It's only been in here for 2 days. I just put it in the water for 2 days, but that's all it took. And it makes sense. It's such a prolific grower. It makes so many freaking babies growing all over the place. But what it will do is grow so bushy, especially in Australia, that it will end up choking out the natural environment, or the natural plants that live in that environment. It's absolutely insane. And I never would have thought of it. Look, cute little baby sweet spider plants. It's like, no, but definitely it totally does. So it's quite a shame. So just another one that if we are going to be putting this outside, we just need to make sure that we are keeping it all nice and closed up in our lovely little, we just need to keep it in pots if we're going to put it outside. Let's not plant it in the yard and have it run wild, you know. Especially if you're in a southern area. And this is a project for another time, sorry. And this is a recovering plant. You guys know how it goes. Everything's always a mess here, but we have fun. All right, let me take you guys outside now, and we can talk about what I've been dealing with for the last 7 years, invasive plant-wise. All right, so we're gonna go outside now, but I did wanna mention, like, if you know of any plants in your area that other people consider houseplants, and people are buying them up and they're being produced as houseplants, but in your local area, they are considered like a weed or like a pest plant to be removed, like definitely drop it down in the comments, because I feel like this is something that's not talked about enough. And honestly, before I hopped on TikTok and I started actually talking to people about the plants that naturally grow in their environment, I would have never freaking known. I had no idea. I thought that they were just picked up in tropical lands and brought and propagated, you know, tissue cultured and then sold worldwide, and that they were just mass produced as houseplants because they were such hardy growers. I didn't realize that they were something that is actually invasive in areas, and that people were actually taking them and planting them in areas that they don't belong in, and now they're even more invasive than they were considered originally. So it was just totally mind-blowing. So definitely, if you have some of these that I have not listed, please drop them down in the comments below. Okay, let's go outside. So the first invasive plant I wanted to talk about is this bamboo. This is a golden bamboo variety. It's rhizomatous, which means that it will continue to grow everywhere, all over the place. And it is not contained. It did have this whole entire area taken over, and we just keep chopping it back. And that's the only way we can contain it. Even digging it up, it keeps going. The next one is blackberries. As you can see, they're just trying to eat our little shed here. I cut them down every single year. This is one season's worth of growth. We have had huge hogs come through and chop them all down. This is just what I have hand cut over here and pulled back down off of it. It was planted here years ago, and it has just taken over freaking everything. And it continues to grow back every year. It's a little less every year. I have to chop it down twice a year because it gets that tall. Once in the summer and once in the early spring times. And you can see the blackberries here, even just in the yard where I cut it down with the mower. It's just popping up. Like, this is brand new growth right here. You can see, and it's just sticking around. Like, it's not going anywhere. And they are rhizomatous as well, which means their roots are deep underground. And even if you pull them up, if you leave one little tiny portion of a root, it comes back. So there are people out there that are paying hundreds of dollars in order to get blackberries from the grocery store, or to buy blackberries, you know, from our little grocery store. They'll buy like the little blackberry packets and whatnot. And I'm just pulling them up and ripping them out because they're so invasive, and they are not naturally here. They were brought here. Another plant that I am having to deal with is called Japanese knotweed. And here you can see that I have just chopped up a bunch of them. I've pulled it up, and you can see the rhizomes are still under there. It's going through rocks and weed barrier to grow up through here. And this is, again, just one season. I keep digging them up and I keep pulling them up every single year, and I've done everything to them. You can see the blackberries are the same way. They're just going right on through, and they're just sticking around too. These are highly invasive plants. You can see the rhizomes are coming right back up, and they get tall. The Japanese knotweed will get up to 8 feet tall, and you can literally watch it grow when it rains. Like if it rains in 2 days, I guarantee you these little rhizomes will be 2 or 3 feet tall by the end of the day. It is insane how fast it grows, and I wish I was exaggerating because then I wouldn't have to chop it down. It is horrible. And it is not native here either. This Japanese knotweed was brought here. It's considered edible in some cultures, which is great, except for we don't need to eat this much of it. If it was one little patch, that would be fine, but all of this is dried knotweed and blackberries that I have chopped down and I have pulled down. And I've spent the last 7 years fighting this. This is after 7 years of someone coming down and destroying it. But originally it was planted here as a food source, as was the blackberries, I'm sure. And people were happy to have them originally, but it has just taken over so much. You can see the blackberries over there. I have to go and I have to dig those down by hand, and they grow back every year. I've got a pear tree and a plum tree and an apple tree over there, just completely encased by them. And every year I take down a little bit more and we fight them back a little bit more. But it's taking up so much time and effort. And even with big mechanical machines that come through and chop it up, like this entire field that I'm looking at right now was completely dirt and dug up. And all the blackberries and these Japanese knotweed came right back. It's crazy. So it's definitely something to take seriously as far as what we release where and paying attention to what's native and what's not. I also wanted to show over here, this is the lemon balm, which doesn't sound too terrible. I mean, it's part of the mint family, but you can see how much it's spread. It's spread all the way over here, and this is with me chopping it up and digging it up every year, and it comes back every year. I even went out and dug some up earlier this year, and it still grew all of this. And it's nutrient deficient in something over here too, and it's still growing. Oh my gosh, this stuff just never quits. So I dug all of this up. This was completely nothing, just dirt, and it still grew back over here as well. You can see it peeking up. And I have my kids playing over here and stepping on it and everything. Excuse the toys, but yeah. And there are a lot of invasive plant species. It just depends on what you're dealing with in your area. These are just a couple of plants in my area. And I just definitely wanted to make sure to share so that way you guys get to see something, you know, that it's like an actual real problem, not just something that's talked about in the science magazines or whatever. Oh, we get sun now. Yay! It was cloudy for a little bit there. All right, so if you live in Washington State, this is probably a very, very common sight. This ivy, it grows everywhere. It grows along our freeways. It grows on our trees. It's not a native plant either. Like, it grows in our cities. People thought it was a good idea back in the 70s and 80s to plant this at the base of trees, and it is just taken over. It is not an ornamental, decorative plant. It is highly invasive. And it's absolutely insane how much of it there is. And when you burn it, it can actually damage your eyes. It can cause skin rashes. It's just not a great plant to have around. It does have some medicinal uses from what I understand, but definitely not to the extent that it is existing here. It's absolutely crazy. It is battling for supremacy here with the blackberries. It's literally choking out the blackberries so that they can try and choke out the trees and bushes together. Like, oh my gosh, it's horrible. It's definitely not something that should have happened. So, and this is not my area. This is not my property. This is just something I drive past. I haven't removed all of the ivy that was in my area. I'm still working on the blackberries, but this is definitely not something, I mean, if you really hated somebody, you'd toss some ivy in their yard. Like, that's what kind of plant this is. It's not a nice plant. Oh my gosh. But yeah, it is beautiful though. It is definitely beautiful and easy to propagate. So if you're digging some up and you want to grow some for the house, definitely go ahead and propagate it. Like I said, this is not my property, so I did not do that. So here's my little ivy plants. I really enjoy ivy, but I have seen this exact kind of ivy growing along the side of the road, taking over everything. And if you look up ivy, the number one thing that it's going to tell you is do not plant it outside. It will take over your tree. It will kill everything. I also had to dig up a bunch of this from my aunt's house when I was a kid. This one in particular. And I really liked it. It was so pretty. I felt so bad digging it up. But it has taken over everything. It was killing her tree and it choked out all of the native plants. And it just wasn't good. So I love this. I am very excited to be putting it downstairs on my mantle. It will not be going outside though. There is no way. And if I were to ever put it outside, it would stay on the porch and it would stay in a pot. But I mean, look at this guy. He just creeps and he grows. I mean, he's got roots and everything. He was already invading another pot when I bought him from the store. Like, oh my gosh. This guy's just running wild all over the place. Same here, it's already escaping the pot. Like, hello, with all your little aerial roots. Just reach in, trying to climb and take over everything. My goodness. Definitely make sure to put these little guys in a timeout. Don't let them go all over the place. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully this was kind of fun and something you enjoyed. Made you think a little bit about where these plants come from and what they're doing, how they're affecting our ecosystem other than just using up the plastics and harming the environment that way. I know other people have talked about how plants, just us consuming plants is an issue. That's a topic for another time, but I really wanted just the environmental impact of what we're doing with our plants and how we can behave more responsibly with them to just really open up a dialogue, you know? Anyway, I hope you have an amazing day and thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Bye!